Thank you, goddess. Namaste.
Namaste, Bhagavan. How are you?
Oh, pretty good for an old man. How about you?
Doing well myself. Can't really complain.
All right, all right. What are we going to talk about today?
So were we going to get into the physical category of the six categories?
Yeah, but something has come up in the meantime, which is that one of our viewers made the comment that I can't learn how to deal with death. So I started this like mini series within the category of how learning how to die. And the latest episode I posted yesterday. I don't know if you had a chance to see it.
Oh, yes, I have.
Oh, good, because it's got some really esoteric stuff from the Buddha. Um, and there are no comments. I mean, no meaningful comments. And like it appears to have gone whoosh, right over their heads. So was it too much? Was it too far out, Dave?
I mean, the way that Buddha puts things, since they talk so poetic, maybe the language structure is different. It's hard to parse, but I think that you did a good job of explaining uh, paṭicca-samuppāda in other videos and in that video. So it wasn't too far off for me as far as like how birth and death are interconnected and how the cessation of birth equals the cessation of death, because who's the one that is taking birth or who is the one that is dying. So Buddha is trying to like bring you to an axiom that's eternal and not one that's temporary, and then allow you to see how this course comes up and study yourself. Maybe it needs like a longer series to explain that, because that's highly condensed information.
Yeah, yeah. I didn't want the video to be too long, you know? And we've also gone over all this stuff before extensively, like
Mhm.
there's a whole series on paticca-samuppāda or dependent arising, 12 or 13 videos just on that alone. And then there's the vortex concept, which is the feedback loop between consciousness and name and form. And we've done a lot of work with that too, at least half a dozen videos just on that. The problem is people don't look into these things deeply. So when we just summarize it in a video, it's hard for them to grasp because they don't go to the original sources or they don't look up the old series that explains in detail, you know. So um, what can I say? I'm giving them the tools if they would just use them. And the problem is, of course, that they don't. So, like Ramana Maharshi said, death is just a thought. Whoa, what does that mean? Well, it means that we make terms, we make labels, designations, terminology that this is life and this is death, right? And they're like, we put them on some kind of a polar opposite scale, like a relationship, that these two things are opposite or they're different, but actually they're not different because they both refer to a state of conditioned existence, dependently originated, uh, dependently arising from the same source, consciousness and name and form. So, unless you start to realize that this world is not real, that it's just a projection, it's hard to grasp the reality of that. It's hard to work with it or do anything with it. But if you practice meditation and you actually still the mind and stop the constant inner conversation, blah, 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 you know, that's the actual practice. Watch the breath and still the mind. It's really simple. Then from that practice, everything else is derived. That's, I think, the essential point of the whole video.
That was way more thorough. I mean, without going into the examples, but it's explained there. I think you're getting the point across accurately. I think just some people may be missing um, the experience that allows for that context to broaden and
Because they
to
don't do the
understand.
practices.
Yeah, yeah.
They're just sitting there. It's all armchair philosophy, you know?
I think also the vortex um, concept is another one that's kind of hard for people to understand. Um, that, and I've seen this in some community that I've recently joined, that philosophy is probably the main thing that's talked about as the ultimate realization, or some God's name or something of this sort. Um, and they're not understanding that. And you said it, anything between subject, object, and the awareness is going to be situated in this duality.
Yeah, it has to be because consciousness is dual by nature. You have the subject and you have the object. I am aware of that. So you have this I that dichotomy in consciousness. That means consciousness is even dualistic. People want to say consciousness is the ultimate. No, self awareness is the ultimate. That's non dual because the self being aware of itself, there's no duality between the subject and the object. So, anyway, I just wanted to, go into that a little bit and try to clear it up for some people who aren't getting it.
Yeah, because one of the main things that you kind of hear when you start doing research into yogis is the person who makes friends with death. You hear this, or even my interest into spirituality came from Terence McKenna and the ego death. So
I wish he
it
was
always had some,
around.
right. There was always some death. At least death is always going to have to be approached on the spiritual path. It has to do with your mortality and understanding immortality. Those are all baked in there, whether it's a myth or a story or a certain practice. You start to see that it's a common thread. The human being understanding its own mortality. But then, we have the special ability, it seems, amongst all the creatures on the planet to tap into something that's higher, something that is not bound by time. And like we were saying, I don't think everybody gets to enter that so easily, because the predicament right now is that everybody is just kind of comfortable and seeking maybe temporary satisfaction and not wanting to go anywhere near the concept of death in any area of their life.
Yeah, that's why you see all of these spiritual wisdom paths like Taoism, Buddhism, Hinduism come from ancient agrarian civilizations where 90% of the population was engaged in food production. And the wild forests of nature were just next door, just on the next field, you know? There were wild animals and danger at all times. And the danger was expressly physical. Wars in China, were fought with hand-to-hand combat, you know? Not like you press a button and launch a missile like today.
Way more intimate process of war.
So people came face to face, literally, with death and the possibility of death on a fairly regular basis. Yeah, they were much more intimate with death, more closer to death than they are today. We insulate them today by the whole technology and economy, the whole structure, even the education process is set up to insulate people from the idea of death. But if you live on a farm, you see animals dying all the time. Huh? So it's like, you can accept it much more readily because when animals die, they don't struggle against it. They accept it. They just lie down, and accept it. They don't check into the hospital.
Oh my God.
The humans struggle. They will spend their family's entire fortune struggling against death. And it's miserable. They have all these tubes and, quality of life is horrible. That's why doctors, it's very interesting. I read an article about how doctors deal with death. And most doctors, when they're diagnosed with a terminal illness, will not take anything more than palliative care. Palliative care means making you feel good or good enough. Uh, so they won't go for heroic interventions because they know it reduces the quality of life to something unbearable. Better to just get it over with. But actually, the meditation on death, we're going to go into this in the next episode, the Vedic approach to meditation on death. And it's very interesting and super easy. I mean, I can't understand why people don't do stuff like this because it's really, really simple. You just meditate on yourself as already dead and like taking your body and putting it in the funeral pyre and stuff like that. And that, what it says in Shankaracharya says in his commentary, it eliminates the tension between being alive and sick and being dead. So that stops the suffering because the suffering, again, is mostly in your mind. It's mostly mental. Oh, I'm going to die. But, well, I mean, it's kind of pathetic because we are the vital force. And the vital force is immortal within the existence of the universe. That's the mechanism of reincarnation. The only thing that dies is the gross body. The subtle body never dies. At the end of the creation, it merges back into Brahman, that's all. So really, we're all immortal, we're all eternal. But because we have a poor degree of knowledge of these things, we don't realize. And we identify all too easily with the gross body, which is the illusion, the Maya, that which is not. Anyway, I don't want to get on a whole detailed thing, that's for that series. And I'll finish it off, I think, in the next video. So can we then talk about the physical post-traumatic growth?
Yeah, I think I actually have an interesting story to share from a devotee that I met recently. He's from Estonia, which I haven't heard too much about.
Oh, that's because everybody there is always stoned.
You just
Sorry,
had to, right?
I couldn't
You
help
just,
myself.
you just had to. So, He's 20 years old. When he was, I believe, 16 years old, he had got diagnosed with a cancer inside of his blood and cancer in a couple of other places in his body that was deemed to be terminal. So he got put inside of a hospice, and he was a Make a Wish kid, for cancer research. So he said that in talking to him, his energy was so jovial, almost like a little kid, and it made me think that some facing death at such a young age did something to this boy that pushed him in maybe the polar opposite of depression, made him really value life. And one of the things that he shared with me was that his mother was feeling, so depressed. She couldn't let go of the fact that her son, was suffering. And he said that because of her emotions, he wasn't getting better. He felt organically that he could just live this out and die and be okay. But his mother mourning over his, body while he's sick wasn't doing him justice. So he told his mother to leave, go to the house, don't worry about him. And the doctor said, okay, we're going to put you on chemotherapy. The likelihood, is not very likely, but we give it like 6 months. And he told the doctors with the most optimistic attitude that he is going to get out of there all cured in 6 months. And lo and behold, exactly that happened. And it seemed that because of the way that he took that experience, uh, and like you were saying, what did you say, palatal healing, you said, with the doctors, that instead of going into very crazy invasive procedures, they just do things
Palliative
to
care. Hospice,
palliative care.
yeah, it means palliative care. We're not going to do anything heroic, no big operations or, you know, resuscitations or anything like that. We're just going to let nature take its course, basically.
Yeah, and it seemed like this organically came out of this kid, and he ended up, shortly after getting over that, he ended up getting into Hinduism. He was going to make a trip to India. Then he found a guru over in Estonia. Now he's going to go to the ashram. So he was just showing me how these different things led to the spiritual path, but one of them was facing death, physical death at a young age. And I thought that that was a perfect example of somebody that had a traumatic experience that ended up finding the path to self-realization in one way or another.
Wow, great story. I want to share one from my own life. When I was in music school, I was a sophomore in music uh, conservatory. One night, I was late for a concert. I had gotten halfway to the venue and realized I forgot my music, my sheet music. So I had to race back to my house, and then I was going back, and I was trying to go too fast on back roads in the rain, in the dark. And this guy came the other way in a big station wagon and suddenly turned right in front of me. And I couldn't stop, and I hit him. Blam, right? Totaled my car. And I don't know if you can still see the scars. I split my lip here on the steering wheel and knocked out a bunch of teeth. And so I wasn't going to be doing any flute playing for some time. Uh, Also, I broke my ankle and so on. So I had to drop out for the rest of the semester. And I was just at home and feeling all sorry for myself, like that. But then this girlfriend that I had known a few years earlier, when she was still like underage, came back from California with a bunch of LSD. I mean, the really good stuff that was available then, Owsley, uh, vitamin C tabs, and we tripped together. And here I was all banged up, you know, I was a mess. But she was like, look, this is just your body. And we're not going to do anything with your body. We're going to go into your mind. And she took me on this trip.
Wow.
And, oh, yeah, but it made a whole different, like a 180-degree turn in my state of mind, where I saw actually, see, I was training to be a music teacher. And this made me realize, actually, I don't want to be a music teacher. I don't want to teach in public school. Public school is a drag. I want to be like a performance musician and a composer. I had already been composing music and won a couple of prizes for it. So I changed my major um, from teaching music to performing and composing, and finished. Before I even finished at the conservatory, I got recruited by a big company in New York to compose music. I had won several more prizes, including the NYU Young Composers Contest, and I think it was 1967. And I got recruited like right out of school before I even finished, and went on to make, in those days, was a very high salary at this New York ad agency. So, I mean, everything turned out differently, you know, because of that accident. If everything had gone smooth, I probably would have graduated and got a teaching certificate and gone on to be completely miserable in public school. But as it was, I spent about a year and a half in New York, made a lot of money, and then went to the West Coast. I quit, went to the West Coast, and I found my guru. So you see, this was part of the chain that led to my spiritual renaissance, meeting my Adi Guru, which was really the biggest transformational thing in my life. It set me on the spiritual path for good, because he was such a powerful, influential personality. You know, yeah, he had a lot of temples and money and disciples and stuff. That wasn't what made the difference. The difference was that he was realized. He was totally convinced. His being was not like an ordinary human being at all. You know, he was unflinching. I mean, he was already, well, actually, I'm older than he was then, huh? But because he had lived in India, he was kind of in bad shape physically. But it didn't affect him at all mentally. He was extremely sharp and remembered people and remembered everything about them with great clarity. He was an excellent judge of people and a terrific manager, and could motivate people and get the best out of them. So, you know, I had never met anybody like that before. And
I
really,
think Srila Prabhupada,
go
I
ahead.
think Prabhupada is a really good example of somebody who approached death as like a moral, almost in a sense.
Say again.
That Prabhupada was like a martyr for his cause. He approached death in such an interesting way, and I kind of like his story because you think when you think of a self-realized being that their life is going to be all peace and kumbaya, but yet his life was tough, and the predicaments of his death were even
More like the Battle of
tough.
Kurukshetra than Kumbaya.
Yeah, right. Exactly. He kind of was walking the way of the samurai in the same respect.
Very much so. He knew that it was a suicide mission. He knew.
Yeah, exactly.
So, yeah, he was extremely noble. um, being, sacrificing his life basically for the well-being of his students. So, very few, spiritual teachers even have the opportunity to do that.
Yeah.
He not only had the opportunity, he wholeheartedly embraced it. So, yeah, what a great soul, huh?
The other beautiful thing is that Maya is in aid to this, that she created the predicaments for him to be able to do something that, as much as she created the predicaments for you to get in a car crash and then have a pivot in your life. And I think what you're trying to get at is that these moments will organically happen because Shakti, Maya, is benevolent. She doesn't want you to sit in the porridge that's too hot or too cold. She wants you to move up, be dynamic, grow. So she has to be difficult at times.
She can be a real bitch sometimes. It's tough love. She
Yeah.
really loves us. She wants us to succeed. So she won't let us be complacent. Huh? She'll come up with something to upset our little apple cart. But this brings us back to the point again that the routine, regulated spiritual practice is more or less of a conceit, and thinking that I'm special, I'm doing this sadhana, and I'm going to get some like special treatment from God or something like this. But actually, if we zoom out and if we look at the whole situation of human life on planet Earth, we find that these kind of transformational experiences happen to everybody.
Yeah.
Everybody gets the opportunity. And how we take that or how we deal with it determines the outcome. Whether the experience crushes us or destroys us or becomes a catalyst for some spiritual growth. It totally depends on how we look at it, how we take it. Like that story you told about the devotee, the young devotee. Because he had that attitude, he could grasp what was happening to him as an opportunity and grow with it. And look, he got cured. He got over
Mhm.
it. I mean, leukemia is a tough thing to beat, but he did it. So I think we get like, I don't want to say special powers. We get special grace, I think, from taking these tests as challenges and seeing that they have some value, like long term, to our spiritual growth. And I think if anybody just gets that point from this series, I mean, really, they have got the essence of it. That these things are going to come up, strange things are going to happen, accidents, disease, huh? And finally, death itself is the ultimate test. So, these are going to happen to you, and it's not going to go smoothly, whatever your plans are, What's that joke? You want to make God laugh? Tell him about your plans.
Yeah.
Oh, we're running out of time already.
Oh, that was so fast.
I know. It was like 5 minutes, wasn't it?